How does Medicare Part D work if you buy it as a standalone plan? And how does it work if you enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan with a built-in Part D drug plan? Fortunately, the stages of Medicare Part D are the same in either case. Let's walk through the basic structure of Part D plans. All drug plans have 4 stages, including those inside of a Medicare Advantage plan, and Medicare sets the limits for these stages each year. Companies can offer benefits that are richer than the minimum standard, but not less than that standard. Stage 1 is the deductible, or the amount that you pay out of pocket first each year on your medications before your copays begin to kick in under your plan. Medicare sets the maximum deductible each year, and Part D insurance companies must keep their plan deductible at that or lower. In other words, companies can waive that deductible or set a lower deductible for these plans, but they can't charge a higher deductible. Most tend to stick with whatever highest deductible allowed by Medicare is for that year, but how they apply that deductible can vary, as you'll see here in a moment. Let's assume we are in a year when Medicare sets the deductible at $500. If your chosen plan has a $500 deductible, you will pay out of pocket for your medications until you have spent that much and satisfied the deductible. I mentioned earlier that some insurance companies may offer a lower deductible than Medicare's standard deductible, or they may waive the deductible entirely. A plan with no deductible isn't necessarily the one that is most cost effective for you. Sometimes you may find a plan waives the deductible, but you will usually also find that that plan has higher copays or premiums than another plan with the deductible. In my experience, you'll spend that money one way or the other, either in that upfront deductible or tacked onto the copays that you spend throughout the year. Here's a tip: if you take mostly inexpensive generic medications, look for a Part D drug plan that applies deductible only to the higher tiers. On these plans, you can often get your Tier 1 or Tier 1 and 2 medications from day one for just your regular copay, no deductible applied. This way, you only incur the deductible if you have drugs that fall into the higher tiers, which are usually for brand name or specialty drugs or for some of the more expensive generics. Each plan gets to determine which tier it will place its covered drugs into, and Stage 2 of your Part D drug plan, you'll pay copays for those medications based on which tier they have been assigned to. During this second stage, also called the initial coverage level, you will pay a copay or coinsurance for each medication, again, based on what tier the drug falls into. Insurance companies create a formulary for each plan, which is a list of the drugs the plan covers. These drugs are usually broken into 5 tiers: preferred generic, non-preferred generic, preferred brand, non-preferred brand, and specialty medications. Each tier will have a copay or coinsurance associated with it, and sometimes you'll see a 6th tier, which on some plans is for insulins that the plan covers, which by law must be set at just a $35 copay from you. Typically, the first tier will mainly include preferred generic drugs that have the lowest copays, and the specialty drugs will have the highest copays or coinsurance, which is when you have a percentage of the drug instead of a flat copay. For example, you might find that a drug plan has a $5 copay for preferred generics, $10 for non-preferred generics, and a $40 copay for preferred brand name drugs, and so on. The copay or coinsurance amount listed for that tier is what you'll pay for your medications in that tier when you pick them up at the pharmacy. Now, as you are filling these medications, Medicare is tallying your total drug spending, including both what you pay and what the insurance company contributes or discounts toward these medications. If the total drug spending goes over a certain limit each year, you fall into Stage 3, which is the coverage gap. Sometimes people refer to it as the donut hole, and it is part of all Part D drug plans. When you are in the coverage gap, your plan can charge you as much as 25% of the cost of your brand name drugs. Now, why would our government place a big coverage gap right in the middle of these plans? The coverage gap was built into Part D to encourage people to use generic drugs whenever possible. This keeps the cost down for the National Part D program as a whole. When you use generic medications, you have a better chance of staying under that coverage gap threshold and avoiding the donut hole altogether. Let's look at an example of how your costs might change once you reach the coverage gap. Say you have a Part D plan where one of your Tier 3 brand name medications costs $400 and your copay for Tier 3 meds on that plan is $50. During your initial coverage level, you'll pay $50 for that medication. However, when you reach the coverage gap, many plans will switch to charging you the full 25% of the cost of that medication. This means that when you hit the gap, you would go from spending $50 to $100 for that drug while you're in the gap. Weirdly enough, because of the way the percentages work, you will sometimes see little to no increases when you get into the gap, and I've even seen where the cost of certain drugs goes down in the gap. Just know that if you have some expensive brand name medications, you may pay as much as 25%, and that can be a lot when you hit the gap on those type of drugs. So all in all, the coverage gap may mean that you may pay more than before on some of your meds. You'll want to work with your doctors to keep the cost of your medications as low as possible so that you can hopefully avoid the gap altogether. Finally, stage 4 is called Catastrophic Coverage, and it is the most important protection for you. This is the stage that protects you, it kicks in to protect you from catastrophic medical spending on medications. Once you reach stage 4, your Part D carrier must pay 95% of the cost of all of your medications for the rest of the year. In my opinion, having catastrophic coverage is the single best reason to sign up for Part D. It greatly limits the spending that you would otherwise pay for catastrophically expensive medications. In 2023, the limit is $7,400 for the year. Once that stage is reached, you'll pay only 5% of the cost of your drugs for the year or less. Due to the recent Inflation Reduction Act, the catastrophic coverage level in all Part D drug plans will be at a hard cap beginning in 2024, and in 2025 that cap will be lowered to $2,000. This is very welcome news for people on Medicare who take expensive medications. You should also know that if you plan to get your Part D medications through your Medicare Advantage plan, the maximum out-of-pocket limit on your Medicare Advantage plan only includes Part A and B expenses. Your Part D costs are separate and additional with the same 4 stages that I've described in this video. If all of this sounds confusing and you wonder how in the world to choose a plan, I have some tips for you. Check out our video on why Medicare Part D will drive you nuts before you enroll in a drug plan. It will alert you to some of the common pitfalls and issues surrounding Part D. And if the idea of having someone on your side with your drug plan is appealing, you can get our free help with Part D as long as you have your Medigap or Medicare Advantage plan through us here at Boomer Benefits. We'll run the analysis and help you select a plan each year that makes the most sense so that you can choose wisely. And when we help you enroll, we'll be your agent and you'll have free support from us on the back end if a pharmacy won't fill one of your medications due to a prior authorization requirement or quantity limit. These things happen all the time with Part D, and my team provides free assistance to our policyholders in resolving them.